So let's bring in political analyst Bongani Mahlangu to weigh in on the ANC's January 8th statement to be held in Mpumalanga on the 13th of January. Bongani, good afternoon. Thank you for your time with us here on the SABC at this hour.
No, good afternoon to you, the colleagues in studio and the viewers at home.
Bongani, thank you very much. Let's get straight into the chat and look at some of the expectations. This, as the party president, sets the tone for the party's political agenda and really the significance thereof.
All right, so we know that the significance goes far back as when the ANC was founded. So even during apartheid, there would be a January 8th statement that would, an NEC statement, by the way, that is presented by the president, that would outline the map of the main activities for that year. It has had a consistent structure to it. I would say maybe a framework that goes as the milestones of the previous years or previous year, the priorities, the task, and the theme. But then if you read into the statement of the yesteryear and the years before that, it has basically been the same things that have been articulated: renewal, energy crisis, as far as priorities are concerned, economic recovery, basic services, and then when it comes to the task, it has always been the roadmap towards the turnaround or the renewal, building branches, having a quality cadre, and so forth. So if you look into the actual contents of the statement, I think for the greater part of probably the last 5 to 10 years, it has basically been the same content, just different wording, but in essence, it's been the same thing. So the expectation then in 2024, even though it's an electoral year, and obviously the statement will be anchored around that, but as far as the content, we are expecting that it's going to be pretty much the same content: economic recovery, fighting corruption, ESCOM, Transnet, renewing of the ANC, and so forth and so on. Nothing new.
Bongani, thank you for those sentiments, because given what is said to be outlined in the statement, I mean, it usually is a tool which enables the ANC members to perhaps speak with one voice. And at this juncture, how unified are they appearing?
At this juncture, I think it's the most difficult juncture of the ANC. I mean, you have MK that was launched in 16 December 2023. So it was basically launched last month, registered in September. But then if you look into the activities of the individuals that have been at the forefront of launching this structure, aside from the former president, Jacob Zuma, these individuals have always been on the ground. They've always been active. If I can take you as far back as when they were, I think, a blockade of the entry closer to, I think, Pietermaritzburg or Durban, it was these same people. There was a time when I think Durban CBD, there was removal of illegal immigrants that were operating there. It was the same people, and they've been active in other activities as well. But then they launched in December. And aside from other people that have left the ANC or other structures that have formed as breakaway structures, this remains the most significant threat to the ANC. And that was less than a month ago, less than 30 days ago. So now this statement will be then presented this time around, and it is a very difficult time in the context of MK, but in general, this is going to be one of the most significant and most difficult elections the ANC has faced since 1994. So it's going to be very difficult because you have then the MK on one hand and the EFF. And I mentioned those two because they eat from the same pot as the ANC. Then you have these other small parties, like significantly small parties and individuals that are breaking down the ANC at ward level, breaking down the ANC at VD level, breaking down the ANC at regional level. So those guys are not interested in actually winning, but they're interested in breaking down the ANC. So a lot of analysts and media is only focused on the big political formations, whether new or the pre-existing ones, as the opposing parties to the ANC, but they're not looking at this new phenomenon, at these ends or worms. I don't know how you would call them, but I'm not trying to be malicious or anything, but they're breaking down the ANC at its core unit, which is the branch, because out of all the political parties that will be contesting election this year, the ANC has more boots on the ground, it has the furthest reach. So you can't want to then dismantle it at national level and leave it at branch level, because it has more branches than any other political parties. Hence the emergence of these individuals and these parties that contribute to the 400, 600 and something odd registered parties in South Africa. So it's going to be very difficult, and we need to look into those individuals and parties as well.
Thank you for that point. I even want to go further and perhaps look at the highlights, or highlight the successes rather, and even the setbacks that the movement has achieved in the previous year. What have you observed? I mean, there are some important considerations that add weight to this year's January 8th statement.
There will always be pockets of achievements, but also there will be failures. But I always look at things from what we call desired indicators or desired pathways, meaning what does the community look at? So that is then the pathway or the desired pathway of a community. For example, you cannot build a road where the members of the community do not walk or use. So you must always align with their interests. So the ANC can come and say, yes, we have, since being in government in the previous year, we've built so many houses, created so many jobs and so forth and so on. But are those indicators the same indicators used by the electorate when it comes the time to place a vote behind them or any other party for that matter? And you find that in often than not, there is no correlation, there's no alignment of indicators. So the ANC in the yesterday did their 2019 manifesto reviews and they articulated their achievements. But when you go into the ground, members of the community, they say that no, we don't see all these things. We are still unemployed. Yes, we have RDP houses or so subsidized houses from the state, but we live hungry inside those houses. There is no electricity, and then there are also these things of transnet logistics, firms, companies, investor confidence that has went down because they can't move supplies either from the firm or to the firm. We have seen Pilansberg in their letters of retrenchment articulating such things. So those are then the desired indicators or desired pathways which the ANC does not align to. So they will always, it's like each and every president, they will always say, I did this and that and that. But what does the community have to say when their material conditions have remained consistent or worsened over time? 2023 was really difficult on households because we saw the deterioration of household disposable income in a rapid, direct and significant way. But then if you had to ask a leader of the ANC, they would tell you a different story. But a lot of people now are struggling to afford their existence in this country. So we really have to align indicators, really align pathways, and that is how then these leaders move from being aloof to actual leaders of society.
Well, Bongani, what about the leader, the president himself? Just looking at some of the considerations that come to the fore. It is his second term. So obviously we're looking at some of the appraisals of his performance. Obviously it's an election year, but also just looking at, you know, the Phala saga that also hangs over his head, and what that also means going forward. But if we look at, you know, the overall achievements as well, what do you think these dynamics are playing into for the party and its succession plan going forward?
No, thanks. So you're quite correct. We cannot remove the individual from the collective. We cannot remove the president from the party. But when we look into the president, his integrity with the Phala issue was directly, significantly again hampered. It was an assault on his integrity. A lot of spaces of society now do not see him as a leader with integrity anymore. In fact, we should go as far back as when he started with the Tumamina. There was so much optimism that Tumamina, things will get done. There were even things called Buffalo time, that things get done on time, people meet on time. If you are not on time, it's either you are disciplined or the train leaves you behind. And over the years, then it was then overtaken by Phala. We have seen that all those hysterias were actually not quite true. And that's why one analyst once said, is this a new dawn, a false dawn, or no dawn at all? So we have seen now over the years that it has been no dawn at all. There has been no new dawn. Things have relatively remained the same and worsened. But as I said, there will always be some achievement. There will always be some road somewhere that was built, some stormwater drainage system that was constructed. But all those things take place and at not so significant levels to a point where people can actually say that the individual or the party have charted a way forward. And what do I mean by this? I mean, if you look into the news or any other place, there will always be a minister cutting a ribbon somewhere. launching one school, one this, one that somewhere, but they're not quite significant. They do not translate into the democratic dividends that a lot of our people seek to get some yield from, because it's that yield that they're able to change their lives. When people today go still to the SAPS for assistance, they hardly find any assistance. I am one of those people. When people go to the hospitals or primary, secondary healthcare facilities, they hardly get any assistance. When we look into the quality of our matric pass rate, it's bad. When we look into NSFAS, higher education is bad. So it's really hard to find at a macro level things that we can applaud the individual or the party on. But I do know that in the articulation or presentation of the January 8th statement, there will be some milestones that will be presented, and they will be made so significant in the presentation that you would believe that they impacted your life positively. But when you look deeper, they would have not. So the ANC really has to do something, and there's still an opportunity for it. They are in government as we speak. They are incumbents. They can still do something now to turn that Transnet around, because Transnet, the ports have really bettered the economy. I always say that they are finishing off what Eskom have started. So they can turn those things around. They can remove the Minister Bheki. They can go and ensure that there is sovereign integrity, meaning people cannot come in and out of this country as they will, as they were exposed by the Patriotic Alliance in the last week. That our borders are not being properly manned, even with the establishment of the border management institution or structure that was formed recently. So now those are things that we look into, and those are the appraisals that we will compare or juxtapose with the individual being Cyril Ramaphosa, with the 6th administration, with the ruling party, with the 55th conference ANC resolutions that have not been necessarily been implemented. And these guys are now into their second year since being elected into the 55th administration or conference of the ANC, but we are still not seeing the resolutions being implemented. So it's quite interesting. And also, even if you look into the priorities of the January 8th statement of 2023, renewal, we don't see it. Energy crisis resolution, we don't see it. Economic recovery, we don't see it. Basic bulk services, water, whatnot, we don't see it. Crime and corruption being combated, we don't see it. Building Africa, we don't see it. In fact, with Building Africa, we saw the opposite. SADC releases a report, a damning report against the ZANU-PF, against the MSN Munangwango. The ANC SG, the ANC president and state president were the first and the few that congratulated the ZANU-PF, congratulated Munangwango. So how do you then build an Africa? Congo, there's currently a crisis in Congo. No one talks about it. They talk about crises that are taking place outside the continent. I'm not saying they're of less importance, because lives, innocent lives are being lost. But what about the crises of our continent? About 5,000 people have died in Congo. Women, children, men have been displaced in Congo. Modern day slaves. Libya still has not stabilized. No one is saying anything from the ANC about it. Western Africa, instability, no one. So exactly what Africa are you building except endorsing Munangwanga and the ZANU-PF after a report has said that the elections, they were not free and they were not fair?